Hey folks, Phil the Bee-Man here. Just to do a quick testing round on this four-way evaluation. Hopguard, Apivar, we're going to do the oxalic acid, and what was the fourth method? Formic. So we're going to start, before we do anything more, by sampling the types. I have two sites that I'm doing this test. I'm going to do two samples blended of all the hives. So I've got my sample jars here, marked them clubs, diamonds, hearts, and spades. These hives have been fed quite a bit since the treatment cycle started. This site has had one very large pail, and prior to that a small pail of feed. You can see some of them have really struggled to use all the feed, so I have this crusted sugar on top where the syrup hasn't been, the bees haven't been able to store it, and it's dried and drips. So I guess I'm curious to know what these look like. I haven't traditionally spent a ton of time in the hives in the fall season. Our weather has been quite spectacular, so we've had more chance to get into the hives often. By the end of September, it's cool enough that you're going to do more harm than good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down this row and sample. I guess we'll start with, this is a club. So we'll sample all the clubs, come back, go through the row again. It's really important to make sure that I'm sampling accurately, so I want to make sure I only do the hives that have the right treatment. So let's open this hive up and see what we got. So as you can see, the clubs are the Apivar treatment. And we're about halfway through that, a little bit over halfway through that treatment cycle. In that, it's supposed to be about 40 days, and they've been in since the first week of September. But we'll just have a good look at this colony. So this has been feeding hard for the whole month of September. We're nearly at the end of it now, and they're just packed. Packed to the point where there's only a small amount of brood. Some bees have a little bit of crusted sugar on them. They've been, it's dripped on them and they've got nowhere to put it. Anyway, we'll take our sample. And I'm just going to do one swipe per hive. And that's, well, I guess one swipe per hive isn't that many, but do a bit more. Okay. And you can see why I want to do one sample batch at a time. As soon as I take the lid off, the jar isn't properly identified anymore. So I do not want to be having multiple things open at the same time and screw that up. So we're just going to do one at a time. So this is going to be a bit tedious. Okay, so that's all the clubs on that pallet. So I've got two here to do. And here's another hive. You can see is crusted sugar. They've been given all the food they can take and more. This one's pretty small. Although sometimes they can fool you. because they're not at the top because that's where all the honey is, or feed is. Nice bit of brood here. I'd be worried about that hive. It's underpopulated for the amount of brood it has. That's interesting. Okay. So this is going to be a ton of work to work into these hives. So you can see what I'm doing. I think what I'll do is I'll do one more, but pretty soon we're going to want Dave to put the cameraman the roll on hold and help me get these samples. And then we can do another video on the oxalic treatment. That's a nice looking hive. Wow. I'll bet this box is 100 pounds. Nice patch of brood. Those bees hatching out this month are the ones that are going to get me through to next season. You don't want to see tons of it, but you do want to have some. Okay. All right, we'll turn the camera off and turn it back on if there's further updates, and also when we get some results on these samples. Okay, it's time to shake these samples. I'm in my honey house at the end of the day, and I've got each sample is labeled with the card symbol, so a spade, and then the apiary site, F for Ferndale, and then you can see I've got maybe a heart for the Homewood site. And then while I'm at it, I have a separate trial. We collected samples for the blacks, the clubs, and the spades from Springsteen, and the hearts and the diamonds. So that trial is only a 2x2 trial. And one of these sets, I think it's the diamonds, but I'm not totally sure, is effectively a control because we only applied the oxalic after the samples were taken. The other 3 treatments had been in for 3 weeks. So this is, early results. Let's give the fullness of time on this. But we had a beautiful day and we were about to use the oxalic, so I thought this would be a good time to measure what we had so far and have a bit of control. Okay, so I'm giving you the overhead look here so you can see what's going on. I've got my list of samples, and I've got all my sample jars. And what we're going to do is vigorously shake each one. These have been in the alcohol soap mix, also known as windshield wiper fluid, for a couple days. They were bouncing around in the pickup as we got around the sites. So everything should be pretty loose in there. then I'm going to pour the contents through this kitchen sieve. And I'm going to pour a little bit extra fluid over it. Make sure everything's nicely washed there. Okay. And then we're going to count mites. And every time I got a positive sample, I'm going to put the bees back in the jar. And we're going to count the bees, but I'll probably, you don't want to see me do that. But to get accurate results on this, I feel like we need a really good, not just an estimate on the bees. This is not a field test at this point. We're trying to get an accurate result. So this is going to be a little bit tedious. So this is the spade of the Ferndale. First of all, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mites. Then you gotta get rid of those. Make sure you got a clear section of filter. And what do you see next? Let's do the diamond of that same site. And keep in mind that all this material can, all this fluid can be easily recycled. Not the bees so much. So the diamond, 1, 2, 3. I was hoping we were going to get. One reason I'm not counting the bees till after is I was rather hoping that a bunch of these treatments would be so darn effective that I'd have no mites. So far, that's wishful thinking. I feel that's a larger number of bees than the last sample, so that might be hard to say if that's an equivalent infestation. Roll over to a fresh piece of cloth. Clubs from that site. Ooh, wait. I've got mites sticking to my filter here. Ay, ay, ay. That's another 3. 6. Okay, we're clear there now. Okay, which one are we going to close? Okay, that looks like a clean sample. 0. So I can toss those out of the way completely. Check that there's no mites on my sieve. Hearts. Nice little bag of pollen there. And I see 1, 2, 3. Interesting. Okay, so I gotta put that one back. Checking for mites on the sieve. I think we're okay. Put a little less crap on here. I shouldn't have used my sieve for whatever it was we were cleaning or skimming honey or something. That is a mite. Okay, well, one of the samples is out by 1. Try to push this down a bit more and see if I can get more accurate that way. Okay, repeating the test at a second site. Clots, which was 0 at the Ferndale site. And here we have 1. There it is right there. That was clubs 1. Hearts. Well, looks like we got mites galore here. Not terrible. I'll pull it up so you can see it better. 1, 2, 3. That was hearts. Okay, diamonds. Oh shit, I didn't have my, that wasn't very smart. I didn't have my sieve. I was already looking at my results, trying to do the math on what I was seeing here instead of paying attention. I apologize. And it should be possible just to, now that I got enough fluid in that pail, to just stir these around like that. One. You know what? Because I did that differently, I'm just gonna wash this anyway, just to see if that made a difference. Nope, no difference. Okay, so that one might take it out of circulation. Last one for this site is the spades. Nope, I didn't put those bees back in there. One thing I'm learning from this is you should label the lid and the jar to avoid mix-ups. Okay, spades. And I see one. Now those numbers aren't a huge surprise to me. I did know that this site was more infected than this site was. So, but we don't see as much difference here either as we do with these. Huh. Very interesting. Okay, we'll put those back. Okay, and then while we're at it, so that's the one trial from 2 sites. Here we have samples from a different trial where the black cards were, oh, I forget. This is the great thing about blinded research is it's easier if you don't have a very good memory, because I know one of them is Formic, and one of them is Apistan. And I'll have to go back in my records to figure out which is which. And this yard did have about 1% infestation. So that's 0. That was the clubs and spades, 0. And that one's also 0. Well, that doesn't teach us very much, does it? Either they both work or there was not enough mites there to bother. All right, so the next step will be on the tests that were positive to count the B so we get a good percentage. Don't need to bother all that B counting for the 0 samples, because 0% is 0% no matter what it's divided over. I'll do that off camera because that's just too tedious to tire you with. And then I'll come back with percentage results. Okay, and here we have results. At one site, spades 0.5%, clubs 0.6%, hearts 1.7%, diamonds 0.5%. And then at the other site that was more infected, we have spades at almost 3.5%, nothing on clubs, hearts 2.5%, diamonds 2.25%. And now the big reveal, I guess, which is which. So the clubs is the Apivar, that one, and this one. Hearts is Oxalic, which in this case is basically the control. Spades is the Formic. And diamonds is the Hopguard. So what do we think about that? At this site, the Formic getting a higher result than the control, and this site doing better. Shows why multiple trials are probably important. Hopguard, all 3 of the treatments here did substantially better than the control, whereas in this case, the Apivar obviously really really did something spectacular, and the other ones not so much. So this is early results. We'll be testing these again at the end of the treatment period. This is sort of midway, but I would say the decision to apply Apivar as my primary control method this fall, I'm feeling pretty good about, because it's these numbers, like this site where the mites are probably, you know, hit and miss whether hives are infected or not, because I think I had 0.5% infection over the pooled sample on the yard. This site was right at that 2% level on September long weekend, so you know it's probably creeping up, you know, well over 2.5. And you know, relying on Formic, I don't think would have done it. Relying on the Hopguard wouldn't have done it. So, whereas the Apivar appears to have knocked things back. And then, yeah, no results either on. There's not no results, but here the dark. Or you know, one of these treatments is Apivar and one is the Formic. The fact that they're both 0 when we have you know, Formic not controlling here probably means that, you know, I maybe didn't pick the right apiary site to do that test on. All right, so I hope that's of interest. And stay tuned. I'll be demonstrating, or I'll be sampling these at least once more this fall. And then in the spring we'll do, you know, initially at least we'll be doing a mortality assessment. And because that's, keep in mind, right? Suppose that you know, it turns out that Formic over a longer period does as good as Apivar, but it kills a bunch of queens, then that would affect what you think about the treatment. So, and likewise, so now these controls, the same day the samples were taken, we did the first blast of Oxalic. And so we could end up bringing those controls down into a more reasonable level. So, stay tuned, and I'm continuing to have fun with these videos. I hope you are too. Have a great day.